I want to welcome you to this month's webinar for the membership of the National Chimney Sweep Guild. Coming on the heels of a very successful launch of the CSR training seminar at the Chimney Expo presented by Brandy Biswell, we decided to make this month's episode, our webinar, all about how to have superstar CSRs. What's involved in the makeup of a CSR? How does a CSR become a true superstar? So, in today's edition, we're going to talk about all these things. It's going to be myself, Cheryl Eisenhower, and Brandy Biswell. Because here's the whole thing: the success of your service call, the success of your sales calls, it's going to all start at that first phone call, that first contact. And who's that person they're going to be talking about? Well, it's going to be what we call the director of first impressions for your company. So if you want to learn how to set the stage for success, listen in, get your notebooks out, take some notes, because there's going to be the gold nuggets coming out that may just be the answer you've been looking for to have your own phenomenal director of first impressions on staff. Talk to you later. Appreciate you being with us. Stick around. Webinar will be starting in just a minute. Okay, so as we get started today, one of the things that the three of us did about a year to 2 years ago is we did a combined class with all three of us on this class, and we talked about it from the areas of expertise that each of us had. This is a class that we did live. I believe we may have done it twice now live, but it's also recorded and on our online learning platform, the CBC Virtual Academy. So if you are a subscriber, hey, I highly recommend you go there. And if you're not a subscriber, you can subscribe, or you can buy just that class off of our website by going to cbcvirtualacademy.com, which there's a load of classes there. But like I said, this is all about the CSR, the customer service representative. And what Brandy has robbed a term from someone else, the director of first impressions, because this is what happens. And as we go into this, I want you to put in your mind that you walk into a restaurant this evening and you're going to have dinner with your loved ones, your family, your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, and you walk in. And who's the person that greets you right there? The person that greets you is that hostess. And her job is she is the director of first impressions for that restaurant. And here's what we know: if that hostess does a crappy job, if that hostess does not show you respect, if that hostess does not make you feel welcome, I will guarantee you your meal will suck. The taste of the food, you'll look at everything bad simply from that bad experience from walking right into that door. And that's the same thing in a service business. A customer calls, and a customer really doesn't know how to ask the right questions. Here's in that customer's mind: are you a good company? Are you a company that I'm going to be glad that I engaged your services? Or is this going to be a disappointment to me? And see, this is the setting the stage. This is setting the stage for success. Because if the stage is set properly and all the systems are in place, what's going to happen on the other side is it's going to be a successful customer experience. And not only is it going to be a successful customer experience, it's going to be one that builds reviews and testimonials for you. Because the thing is, who amongst us doesn't tell people how great our business is? We all tell it in our marketing. Hey, we're the best choice. We're the best in the area. We're this, we're that. That's all bragging. But whenever you got reviews and testimonials, that makes it the truth. So, Cheryl, what's your thoughts on this subject matter of that director of first impressions, that customer service person, that CSR? What's your thought processes?
Well, my thought process is you were talking about a restaurant last night. And just an example, they don't have a hostess, you just sit yourself, but the waitress seemed to be skipping us over and going around. So by the time we got our meal ordered, basically I could have cared less if I ate or not. And it's the same way in any service business. If the CSR cannot answer the phone, I can understand that. but I cannot understand why they won't call back and on a real speedy time frame, because that's what I'm looking for. They're my caretakers, if that's a good way to put. When you're going into the business, they're going to take care of me. They're going to find me the right technician. They're going to give me enough knowledge that I know I want to work with that company. And you cannot train behavior. Behavior comes with a person. So if you don't have the right person with the right behavior, the right seat, your CSR is not going to fulfill her position.
Yeah. So, Brandy, you've been working with us here at CVC Success Group for a couple of years, and probably the demand for you has exceeded what your expectations ever were, because this is a big thing. We have people on Brandy's waiting list. We need to make another Brandy, as we've often talked about, but making another Brandy, another Cheryl, another Jerry, we're pretty unique people when we look at who's on the screen right now. But you've worked with offices around the country. Not only that, you have visited with them, you have been in there, you've been there, you've had coaching calls with these people, and just last week you had 18 people in a class. So what makes a successful director of first impressions?
Gosh, there's so many things, but honestly, it just starts right there at that first encounter on the phone. It starts in how they answer the phone, the inflection in their voice. Is it a professional greeting? Can you hear the smile on the other end? And then, do they have the knowledge? If I'm calling a company and I have an issue and the person on the phone seems like they have no knowledge, then I'm wondering if the person coming out to my house has any knowledge, because they obviously haven't cared or spent the time to train their office. So how do I know that they have cared and spent the time to train their technicians? And so it's really important from the very first call that we're instilling that confidence in the customer.
Yeah. And Brandy, let me ask you this in the company of that. One of the courses in the industries we work in, which are the fireplace, the chimney, the venting, the hearth industries, and all those, we suggest a basic course, which is to learn the vocabulary when they come in and what the company does. We call it Chimneys 101. And this is where we see a lot of people mess up because they don't have that vocabulary. As an example, if you're in the chimney business, you got people come to work for you, and the language you use, you talk about crickets. Well, if someone off the street hears about a cricket, they're thinking about some bug. They think about you say a crown. They're talking about the crown on a queen or a king's head. You're talking about a smoke chamber. We got no idea what in the world we're talking about here. So, how important is this basic industry knowledge in that director of first impressions being successful?
I mean, it's critical. You're right. So, the director of first impressions, the CSR, they have to understand the technical side of it so that they can look at a technician's report and be able to articulate to the customer. But then they have to be able to articulate it to the customer in layman's terms. Because if you say a crown to a customer, 9 times out of 10, they have no idea what that means. So you have to be able to explain what that is, where it's located on the chimney, why it's important. And again, this is what helps build trust with the customer for our company.
Yeah, that's it. So, Cheryl, I think you said this a while ago that we're talking about a seed, and that's basically what it is. We hire someone new, and it's just like going to the feed store and getting seeds to grow a plant. Well, when you grow the plant, it's going to take a mixture of things. It's going to take the moisture you need. It's going to take the right food, the fertilizer, and the other thing. But it goes back again. If we have a substandard seed, it's going to be really hard to grow the fruit and the vegetables or the flowers that we're looking for. So from your aspect, you're a behavior assessment expert. You do DISC and you analyze it. And with the data that you've accumulated, you can kind of predict if somebody's going to be successful or they're going to be a failure. So what is the DISC makeup? What is this person's behavior pattern that's going to succeed in this position?
Okay, as far as the disc goes, I need someone. If you're familiar with disc, it's a four layer, a DISC. I is standing for your conversation ability, and everything's rated from 0 to 100. And I need someone above a 50 because I need a person that can talk to the customer very fluently and very easily. You don't want them extremely high because then they talk about the weather and everything else. But if somewhere in that mid range, you have got a level where they can communicate and they communicate quite well. And then the next letter is an S, and the next is a C. I'm going to combine these two. I need my CSRs to be high in both because I need for them to be able to do the minutia. They need to know, they have to be very detailed. They have to understand. They can't fly by the seat of their pants as if they were a low S. They need to be high up on the scale where everything, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. I mean, Brandy would not accept anyone that didn't have these abilities. And if you're a low S or a low C, you're not going to have any of them. So it's a close range. It's almost like a technician because they have to have some of those traits also. But someone sitting in that office seat has to have real high numbers in all three.
Okay, so what I hear from you is I hear they need to be a very high I. They need to be needs to be, if you look at the scale, needs to be, there's an S, and then there's a C. But there's a fourth letter there you left out, which is the D. So where should they be sitting at in their D rating?
Well, as you know, there's only 13% of the world that's really high D. So most of them, they don't need to be making huge decisions. And that's without the methodical thinking of the S and C. Usually you're not going to have a high D and a high S and C. That's just kind of like putting the little devil and angel on your shoulder. You couldn't operate in the world. So their decisions have to be very methodical. In other words, if they're going to make a decision to tell someone something, they need to do the due diligence before they do so. So that's a rarity. In fact, I've never seen a high D with a high S and C. I've seen it high enough, but the D doesn't really come into play so much because they don't have to make that decision. They have to be able to learn. They have to be able to listen. The one thing high Ds don't do, we do not listen well. We are all three on this broadcast. We're all three high Ds, and neither one of us are super listeners. So that CSR has to do that. That's part of her job. She has to hear it. She has to evaluate it. Then she has to come up with an answer that is correct, not just an assumption.
Got you covered. So, Brandy, let's keep going with this same train of thought. We've got to have someone with the right seed, they got to have that right behavior personality. So, doing a DISC assessment during the interview process as part of your selection, that's a really good thing to do. So, from my understanding, that's one of the processes going through this. Excuse me. But you've also got to have something called SOPs. You got to have processes, procedures. You got to have manuals, because when they step in, this is what we don't want to do. We don't want to hire someone that sits there and every 5 minutes they're asking a question and they're saying, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? And if we look at it, we can look at our client, Josh Kelly, Magic Broom in Tri-County, who's established this fantastic wiki page with all this stuff into it. Does it guarantee success? No. But is the systems and the processes part of the success strategy to build this superstar we need on that phone?
Absolutely. And Jerry, remind us, what's the number one problem we see when we go into every office? What's the number one thing that comes up?
The number one problem that comes up in every single SWAT that we do will always be communication.
And so yes, exactly. And so they have to have very strong communication skills. That's one of the things we spent a lot of time talking about last week in the class is that communication skills. So they have to be able to have strong communication with not only the customer, but also with the technician, because we work as a team. And so we want to set the technician up for success when they walk into that home. And that means giving the technician all of the information we've gathered on the phone, not just they want to sweep. That's not enough information, because we know the customer has told us lots of other things. Maybe they're chimney smells, or they're having water entry. They're just giving us a plethora of information. So we can't just write sweep in the notes. Number one, that's not a complete sentence. It's not professionally written, and we're not setting the technicians up for success.
Gotcha. So, Randy, one of the systems that you use, a lot of times people talk about a point system, and you quit doing the point system a while back. And we went to what we call the PIP process. In fact, client yesterday, actually, we had a discussion because he was getting ready to go into it, and he said, "I'm going to re-implement this point system." I said, "Whoa, stop! Let's look at this." We have the PIP program, and I sent him the template on how to put this together. And I said, the problem with the points is there's a lot of issues here. It locks you in. You can't make a judgment call. You've got to enforce these things when you see it. But here's my question to you. You and I and Cheryl, we all agree there are 3 reasons for every waste that happens. Every mistake will always roll down to, number 1, there is no system. Number 2, the system is wrong. Number 3, someone didn't follow the systems. So here's my question, because I was on the call right before this broadcast with a client, and I'll go further. It's a joint client, okay? And we'll get more details on this later. But we have a office person who refuses to follow the SOP, just refuses it. What do you do with that kind of person when they don't follow your SOPs in the office? Because so often, Brandley, in today's world, I keep these on my desk to show them, you've seen these before, but we're handcuffed to our people. So what do? You're sitting in a world that you're scared to fire. You're scared because, can I find a replacement? We all know how difficult this is in 2022. How do you change this attitude?
Well, we'll start with the point system. So let's use that situation, which, by the way, anytime somebody says a point system now, I went to Catholic school when I was younger, and I think of the nuns with the ruler, because that's what the point system is. It's just a very authoritarian, punitive system. It doesn't work with the employee at all. So if this person's not following the SOPs and they're on the point system, okay, so we give them a point, they don't follow it. They don't follow it the next time, we give them another point. We're not working with the employee. With the performance improvement plan and coaching, this is where you need to be at. So the first thing I would ask is why. I would want to know why. So always ask more questions than you give answers. Why are you not following the system? Do they think the system is wrong? Does it need revamped? That's a possibility. Are they just fed up with their job and so they're retaliating? There's a why behind the reason they're not following the system, and we need to know what that why is before we can move on. Once we know the why, then we can coach them. And if we need, then we can move to a performance improvement plan where they're coming up with ideas of how they're going to follow the system, and we're also coming up with ideas of how they're going to follow the system. And it's a collaborative process that we're going to evaluate and hopefully see improvement.
And you know what I saw yesterday, and after this client, he did this, he had the discussion, and he called me back. And there was another advantage of this, Brandy, was he was able to remove his frustrations by writing this down. He said by writing this down and getting this prepared for that meeting, his mind was in a much better place than it was before. So that's a secondary benefit of that. So Cheryl, go back to you, and this is going back to the behavior assessment and the personality and all that. So can you see in a disc, if you're going to have a person that can follow instructions or will be rebellious to the systems, can you spot that in the disc? Turn your mic on.
That's my high D. There's several different spots in there where you can do it. It's, they cross-reference so much stuff in there that you can narrow down pretty much whether they're available for change, whether they're going to listen, whether they're adaptable, whether they're coachable. You can't pick out their exact stress level, but you can pick out the stressors. And so That's why we do behavioral analysis on all of Brandy's people, and all of my clients are doing them on all of their office people now. Where used to you didn't. It was like we don't need it on the office people. And finally it took a while and they started figuring out it's almost more important to do it with the office than it is to technicians, because I need them very precise. I need to understand them. I need to know how to communicate with them. I need to know how they communicate. I need to know everything about them that I can physically do. And that way you can make the predictions of whether they're going to stay or not particularly stay, because people leave now just for leaving, but whether they're going to excel while they're there.
Gotcha. So, Brandy, you just finished that class at the Chimney Expo. If you're listening to us, so you'll be aware, this class is going to be ongoing. And Brandy is actually constructing what she calls her learning loft right now. And this class is going to be held ongoing in the future at Blues Brothers office. We're in the learning loft. Now, be aware, this is going to have a class limit of 18 people that can come. This will be a 2-day class, but watch for information coming out in the near future on when this class will be done again, because you can't have too many people in this. You've got to have a location. And as we walked into it, it was like Brandy was kind of following the process. In fact, I asked her later on in the break, I said, were you doing a SWOT in there? Because she had all these flip charts on the wall that's very similar to what we do in a SWOT type meeting. She said, no, I was demonstrating the process there. So Brandy, if you're training in this class to be a superstar CSR, and right now, you've got some pretty high testimonials coming out of this. In fact, we've got people that are calling and say, Brandy, come to my office. When can you be here? Because they have one employee. Now they want you there for the whole office team. So tell us a little bit about what did you cover in this class? Because I walked in there a couple times and just kind of sat in the back room, and these people were very intent. And the amazing thing was you had one student in that class that was at a client that we've had that you've actually spent time in the office there with them. So what was it that you were sharing with them? What was this recipe to make this superstar?
Yeah, well, it's hard to share all of it because it's a 2-day class. So we work, we don't take too many breaks. So it's a lot of information, but we start off by just going over what are those basic skills that a CSR needs. And we spend a lot of time talking about those. And then we go into what are the soft skills that the CSR needs. And then we go into just how do you answer the phone? By what ring do you answer it on? How do you build that trust with your customer? What's your elevator speech, which I love spending time on that. So what makes you different from the competition down the road? And so we spend a lot of time pulling out from them what makes their company unique and different. Why should I book with your company? Gosh, we just go over so much. We do a quick personality test. That is the colors. Obviously, we can't do the whole disc at that time. So we do a colors personality test and talk about that. And I see Jason Trevino's comment right here about the servant as leader. So Greenleaf actually has a poem that I share at the end of every class I teach, not just this one, called The Servant Leader. It's called The Paradoxes of Being a Servant Leader. And I actually share that at the end of every class I teach. And it's just, if you have a chance to Google it, it's the most amazing paradoxes of a servant leader you'll ever read. I love it. It's amazing. But yeah, I hate to say it's hard to go over everything we did in 2 days, but we definitely go over all of those basic skills and then get more in depth. And I let them know that, with my clients, I listen to their call recordings and I have a scorecard. And so I show them what that scorecard entails. So I'm listening for things like, did they ask to put the customer on hold? Did they use the word may instead of can? I have one client who they have the most professional greeting ever. It's just so professional, and they always use the word may. They never use can. Are they on hold for less than 2 minutes? Can I hear the smile in their voice? And then do they also keep that same enthusiasm throughout the whole call? The way I'm talking to you right now is not how I answer the phone. And I give them the example of, we don't want to answer the phone. Blues Brothers Chimney Service, this is Brandy. I don't want to talk to me now after that. So we work on our voice inflection and how you do have to go a couple octaves higher when you answer the phone. When I answer the phone, I put on my headset. Blues Brothers Jimmy Service. This is Brandy. How can I help you? Did you hear the difference there?
Yes, I did.
So there's a phone voice and then there's your normal voice. And we want to hear the phone voice. We want to be able to hear that I'm smiling on the other end.
And you know, Brandy, no matter how good you are, sometimes you're going to have a bad day.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. So if your director of first impressions is having a bad day, what do we need to do? Because I mean, I recently told someone, go take a walk. Okay. Just go take a walk and get your head cleared. You're having a really bad day, because she admitted to me she was taking people out. Okay. And Brandy, I know you have a hard time believing that could happen with one of our people, but that's so. In Brandy's opinion, what do you do when someone's having that bad day? Because it might not be job related. It could be personal issues. It could be a loss to them. It could be the dog's sick. Okay. We're
Yeah.
all dog people, and I can guarantee you that if either of Cheryl's dogs were sick or not feeling well, she's going to be a little off. And the same thing you are. You're very closely attached. I mean, Abby, she's getting ready to have a little female surgery in a couple weeks. So I know that Cheryl is going through some inner turmoil with this. Okay. So, but again, what do you do when you're just having that bad day? What's the course of action?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you brought that up. And that's why when I do listen to my client calls, I usually do 3 per CSR per week. And I actually pick different days. I never do the same day because they do have a bad day. And I can tell their bad day versus their good day on the phone. It's not usually so bad that the customer can pick it up, but I can pick it up because I'm used to listening to their calls. But when they're having a bad day, that's when we have to assess, it'd be great if we were all like robots and we came to work and we weren't human and we just did our job and nothing else interfered. But like you said, that's not the way it is. Things happen in our day. The dog's sick, grandma died, whatever the case may be. Yesterday for my employees, his work truck had some stolen items from it, and then they stole his personal car from our car lot here. So we all have a bad day. So it's assessing what do they need. So yeah, I'll go back to the situation yesterday, which wasn't a CSR, but it was still an employee. When we realized they had driven to our office and used his keys that they got out of his work truck to steal his personal car. The first thing Jeremy did was he got 2 other technicians to go out and relieve this gentleman from his appointment and also tell this gentleman in person that his personal car had been stolen, because that's not something that we want to tell them over the phone. Then we assessed, what does he need now? What does he need help on? What phone numbers does he need to make reports? What does he need to do to set up his identity theft protection? This technician was really sad because his package of smokes were stolen out of the car. So my husband went and bought him a carton of smokes. And when he told me what a carton of smokes costs these days, I about fell over in my chair. So if you're out there smoking, man, you could be millionaires just cutting that out, it sounds like. And in the office, it's a lot easier to pick up on because we're typically in closer, tighter quarters. And typically we are sharing, what went on last night or yesterday. And so it's really just about seeing what those needs are. A walk is a great example, Jerry, because a lot of times that is what you need. I tell people if customers made them cry or they've had to fire a customer, a lot of times I'll tell them, hey, take the dog and go for a walk around the block, or just go sit by the water cooler and take a mental break, or turn on a YouTube funny show. Okay, so I have to tell this. So one of the things that we did in my class last week, so we were talking about Google reviews and how important Google reviews are. And everybody in the class looked up how many Google reviews their company had. But then just to lighten the mood, I showed them YouTube videos of the late night show where they reenact bad Yelp reviews. And I swear they probably could hear us clear down at the trade show laughing so hard. So it's just seeing, and that's going to be different for each person, right? It kind of goes back to the love languages. That's different for every single person. My love language is just, it's, I just lost it because I'm trying to think of it now. Anyway, some people's are words of affirmation. Some people is touch. It's all different. So it's going to be different what that individual needs. So if you have a big office of a call center of CSRs, every person's going to be different. A walk around the block isn't going to help for everybody. So you have to really know your employee. And again, going back to, 20 years ago, we would say, don't be friends with employees, don't know anything about their personal life. And that's just not the way it is these days. We want to know our employees. We want to know that we're taking care of them both mentally and professionally.
Right. And as I go into this one, I want you to watch Cheryl's face, Brandy, as I start talking in just a minute, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what's called the Hank Hill methods. Okay. I told you, watch your face. So some years ago, I was watching, I forget the name of the show, but Hank Hill's on King of the Hill. So Hank Hill's on there, and he had his niece was at the house, and she was a real pain. And Hank found out that all he had to do was say something nice to her. Just say something nice. And she brightened up. Now, what I'm getting ready to say, Brandy, you may slap my wrist. You may say, hey, that's an improper, and it might be. So I apologize in advance if this goes out.
Wait, do you have like a beep before you say it? Like something we can beep out on here?
So what he did, he simply told her, you look nice today. And that's all he said. And she just brightened up. And I said to myself, that's a pretty good idea. And if my stepdaughter's watching right now, we may get a nasty comment because I did this to her, because she would be having one of those days. And I simply said, you really look nice today. And our entire thing just changed. But it goes back to what you said. That is knowing your people and knowing what's going on. Okay.
And you need to finish that story.
Yeah, later on, she was at our house and our Hank Hill rerun was playing. And I want to tell you the names that she called me, we cannot repeat on this broadcast, okay? Because I was being nice. She was not being nice. And when she saw I had played the Hank Hill psychology lesson with her, it wasn't a good experience at dinner that night, okay?
Words of affirmation, that's her love language, is what that tells me.
Right, but it is. It's like a lot of times, and I know this, and it's like if I'm dealing with a female, the kind words go a whole lot. And if somebody's going through challenges, I found out, hey, if I just say, hey, I hope the day is a better day for you. I hope that, and I've had several people that were having bad days yesterday, and I've sent this out today. Hey, I hope today is going to be a better day for you. I'm right here for you if I can help you. You see what I'm saying?
And do you know what CSR skill you just showed by doing that?
What?
Empathy.
Empathy.
So we also have to talk a lot about empathy, and that's on my scorecard. If the customer calls in with a complaint, are we showing empathy? But that's a huge skill that the CSR needs to have.
Good. I want you to hold that thing. I want to go back. You said something a while ago, and I want Cheryl to identify that more, because you mentioned colors a while ago, and you use one method of color analysis of people, and Cheryl does another one, because we actually learned about a method of which called color code assessment that Cheryl got, she got certified in doing this. So Cheryl, you use this sometimes in hiring. Explain what the color code assessment is.
The color code assessment is basically just a different form of DISC. Different colors stand for different things, but you answer the question. I'm doing them side by side. I basically get the same reading, so a lot of times I won't put anybody through it unless I want to dig really, really deep. But it's so much like the DISC, but it's a longer one. The one that Brandy uses is a good quick one. Get a first impression, move on. But the color coding, it's not quite as detailed as the DISC, but it gives me a few other nuances that DISC does not.
Right. Now, we just had a Facebook user, and StreamYard is not allowing people to be identified sometimes. So I'm not sure who Facebook user is, but I appreciate this comment, because actually this is extremely valuable. And it says, if I'm the first point of contact, we lose. And then it's all in one sentence, which is dead on the money, because to be honest with you, I am not your choice for a CSR. In fact, in my own business, I came to the point that if I answered the phone, if I simply said good morning, because of the tone of my voice, and also I was going to presentation somewhere and I'm working with a room full of people in presentation mode, and it takes me a while to get back. But I'm not the person, and whoever Facebook user is, I applaud you, because this is realistically what many people need to do. You need to understand you may suck at being the director of first impressions. You may be the best technical guy in the country, but at the same time, your attitude and your voice may just turn people off to the highest order. But Brandy, like I said, I wanted to come back to you on this, because you just hit a key thing. If someone is calling your office, there's one of two things going on. Number one, the majority of them will have some type of pain. There's going to be some that desire something. I mean, if we look at it, you sell chimney caps. Very few people call you because they desire a chimney cap on their chimney. They have a pain. They got water, they got critters. There's a reason for that. And if you do not have empathy, is basically understanding. So go deeper on what you taught your students about the skill of empathy.
Yeah, well, we do a lot of case scenarios in my class. So both days there's case scenarios for everything we talk about. And so I give them actual situations. A customer's calling in, this is their situation. How do you show empathy to them? And a lot of times it's just saying, I'm really sorry that you're going through that. That's all it is. And then a lot of times too, if they're defensive. So we also we spend a lot of time day 2 talking about the 4 different customer personality types and how to handle those different personality types and what each personality type needs. I'm a driver. Let's just get it over and done with and spare me the details. And how to show empathy to those specific 4 personality types, because it is going to be different for each of them. And then we also talk about a system called HEAL, which is an acronym for how you actually calm down that upset customer. So in that case, you've got to use empathy and you have to use your HEAL skills.
Okay, so good. So that's good. And one of the things that I've always encouraged in sales classes is, and I believe that on a person's desk, there needs to be several things. Number one, there needs to be something that inspires them. It's a picture on the wall. It could be whatever. There's got to be something that's inspirational to you. It could be your kid's picture. It could be anything. And the other thing that I advise to go on every person's desk is a mirror. And the reason I'm going to suggest that there's a mirror there is right before you pick up that telephone and answer that phone, you look in that mirror and you put a smile on. Because if you don't have that smile, the customer will sense it. And you just got to put those things into play, and you've got to learn those things. So Cheryl, she just talked about the behavior style. So let's go through that, because one of the things we also have on our virtual academy is how to read the customer's disc, how to read their personality. The 3 of us, we are not into the details. If you want to talk for 20 minutes about the details, you lost us back at minute number 2. Now we're getting painful. Now there's other people, they want to talk for 20 minutes about the details. They want to know everything. Just what shade of blue? Is it Williamsburg blue or is it navy blue? Can you identify this, a little bit better? So how important is it to know those discs, and how hard is that to pick up from the conversation?
Actually, once you've done your own and start working with yourself with it, I can pick up your disc off of a phone conversation. It's a little easier face to face because you've got a little body language kicked in there with it. But literally, it's a lot of times it's the tone of your voice. You want me to give you a few cues real now?
Yeah, right. But let's do this. Barbara that just commented here, she's one of our superstars. Barbara, I appreciate your comment here, and you're a person that is dealing very well. So appreciate your comment very much. Keep going, Cheryl.
Well, like you were expressing earlier, the 3 of us are D's. It's like, tell me what you got. Tell me only 1 or 2 things that you've got. Tell me what it costs. Will it work, and how much does it cost, and when are you going to put it in? That's all a high D wants to know. We don't have time for the rest of it. In fact, usually after the first sentence, our mind's over on the second project. But if you're a high I, if you get one of those on the phone, she's going to, or in face, she's going to be talking about herself or himself. They like the higher the I, the more they are about personal stuff. And you can get caught on the phone all day long with an I if you don't watch it, because I'm not saying it's all about me, but they don't want to hear what you got to say. They really don't care about the details either, unless it works with the story they tell you while you have them on the phone as a CSR.
Yeah. So,
Then,
Brandy, let's go to you, back to you. Once you had your disc assessed and once you took the behavior patterns and understood, you and I both understood each other much better. How much did that enable you to see in other people? And I want to add this something, folks. What that woman, Cheryl, is saying is uncanny. She can detect a person's personality almost within seconds. It is, all I will say is it's scary sometimes, okay? It is plumb scary. So how did the disc help you in being able to assess these other people's behaviors, Brandy?
I mean, we're all unique and different, right? But we all fall into certain categories, and one category might not work well with another category. And so I've shared before, but in my office, we all have page 21 and 22 of the disc hanging on the wall. So how do I work best with Brandy? How does Brandy work with others? Going back to the colors test, even, I wouldn't say get along. I get along with everybody, but I guess greens kind of rub me the wrong way because they're very analytical. They're very technical. And I am completely the opposite of that. But once I know you're a green, then I have that understanding and I can work with you better because I know, okay, that's just your personality. That's how you were made.
Got you covered. So we're coming up on the end of today's show shortly. So let's go through a couple things. Let's share. And if you're listening to us right now, live, or you're listening on the replay, these are what I'm going to call the gold nuggets that we would like you to take out of here. So as we go through, my gold nuggets are, you got to have systems, you got to have processes, you got to have manuals in order for this person to successfully do this. Number two, you got to have a person that has the right stuff. In other words, it goes back to their behavior patterns. And your behavior patterns are what you're born with. You're not going to alter this behavior pattern. You can learn to control it, but you can't alter it, such as learning to control listening skills of listening people. Something I've had to bust my tail to do on years, okay? You just have to keep working on these things. You got to put on that happy face. You got to be listening to your customers with empathy. You have to understand they are in pain. I also heard Brandy talking about the necessity of the right words, the difference in the words may and can. May I put you on hold, or can I put you on hold, or I'm putting you on hold? Which one of those tells you this is a company I want to deal with? Because again, this is what the customers are looking for. They are getting ready to invite you into their homes. And in today's world, there is such enormous distrust. We're all customers of Tommy Mello's A1 garage door. Randy called them because their garage door didn't open one day. I called them because my garage doors needed a little work, but I wanted to see if Tommy's Mello's people actually followed the course of what Tommy's preaching, and found out that they did. But your customer has a fear today. There is fear so much, and they're so distracted. When you look out there, social media is playing on our minds every day. It's like Cheryl and I were talking last night, Brandy. We're up to here of hearing about a past president. Okay, let's move on. Let's get into something positive. And that's not a political statement. It is a fact of we got to stop dwelling on the negatives.
No, Jeremy made the same comment when we were watching the national news last night. He was fed up with it too.
It is. It's like, when will this end? And I know when it will end, when something else takes precedent. Right now, the news media has got to keep it going all the time. But those are some of the gold nuggets I've heard us talk about today. Cheryl, what would be some of your gold nuggets?
well, and I'm not going to cover yours again. You did quite well there. My gold nuggets, is where I base myself at is with the behavior, with the way people interact. And my main thing to add to this is know thyself before you try to know anyone else. Once you know yourself, you know how to condition yourself for the other behavior forms.
Yeah. So, Brandy, what about you? You got any dull nuggets you would add into this?
Mine really goes back to that director of first impressions. So anytime you're hiring for a CSR or when you're looking at your CSRs today, just keeping in mind that they are the director of first impressions. And so are they living up to that? And if they're not, get them some education. If they are, get them some education and continue to feed into them. We talked about, I think the biggest shock to me was when our class filled up for the expo so fast and we had a waiting list, because I honestly thought a lot of business owners would not see the value in taking their CSRs off the phone for 2 days. But I was completely wrong, and they did, and I couldn't be more pleased with that.
Yeah. You had total offices shut down for you, Brandy. Are you aware of that?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, it was crazy. Yeah.
it was. So anyway, we've got 5 likes today. We appreciate this. We hope this is a matter. And here's my final thoughts on this. Every one of us is a human being. And as human beings, we have what's called the fight or flee mode in our psychology. And that means when we face something, we're going to make a decision. When we face a challenge, we have 2 choices. Number 1, we're going to fight, or number 2, we're going to flee away. Okay. So what we've got to do is we have to control that fight or flee motive that is in our brains. The other thing you have to do is control what you're saying to not activate that fight or flee motive in other people. And as Brandy has said, it's so easy today. We live in the United States of the offended. That's a quote from Robert D. Rayford, who was a newsman here in our local town for many years. And I'll put it in another way. There was actually a comedian, and he was talking about this one day, and this is what you don't want to do. Anyway, said he was on an airline flight, and the stewardess came up, and he was playing with his electronic game. And the stewardess said, "You need to turn that off." And he looked up and he said, "Well, I'm just about done with this game or whatever." And she said, "Sir, I told you to turn that off." And he looked up at her and he said, "Ma'am, when I got up this morning, I didn't intend to be a jackass. It was not in my psychology to be a jackass today, but you just mashed my jackass button." Okay. So I think that's where it goes out, because we all have a jackass button. All 3 of us on here have a jackass button, and it can be mashed. Okay. And that's the skill of being this tremendous director of first impressions. Number 1, never let anyone mash your jackass button. Control your emotions and learn what you're saying to never push the jackass button of a customer. Remember, you are setting the stage for success for this company. So, Cheryl, is there anything you would add to this episode before we end it?
I just want to see everybody out there take their office to a different level. They're not just people in there just to answer the phone. They're there representing you.
Yep. And Brandy, what about you?
Nothing to really add, just a funny story. When you were talking about that last night on the way home from work, my daughter called, and, we'd had kind of a crummy day with our technician's car and everything. And so I was kind of in a little, we'll call it a crummy mood. And then she gets in a little crummy mood. And I said, "What is wrong with you?" And she goes, "I'm just matching your attitude, Mom."
And not only that, Brandy, it was her birthday.
Today's her birthday, yeah.
Oh, today. Sorry. Okay. It was pre-birthday. But anyway, this is her sweet 16. Okay. I mean, really. And you're looking to hear, and, so, hey, it's like, "Mom, this is my day. Don't ruin it." Okay. But here's the whole thing. And again, what we want to do is, number 1, if you need the education to train your CSRs, dear office people, we have it on our virtual academy. Go there. It is www.cvcvirtualacademy.com. It's loaded with courses to help your people. Number 2, there's nothing better if you want to be and have a super CSR than to put her in the room with Miss Biswell sitting on this course right now. So what you want to do is keep your eyes open. When these classes are held, Brandy, there's a class limit of 18, correct? That's it. There is no more. Okay. That's all that fits, but not from room size, but from her ability to do this effectively. This has been very well researched. She has copyrighted materials she's going to be sharing. And I can guarantee you that if they come out of this, if they have the right stuff coming in, what's going to happen is you're going to get a superstar coming back to your office. So watch for this unveiling that we hopefully will be very soon. And we're going to be putting this on there at the Learning Loft in Kansas City, Kansas. It's going to be upstairs at Brandy's office. We'll get all the details out, how to get there, how you get from the airport, hotel, lodging, and you'll be serving lunch at this. Am I right, Brandy?
Yeah, and it's a brand new space. The cabinets went in yesterday. It's beautiful.
It's a brand new space. So that's the biggest holdup right now. They have it. Her and Jeremy have invested a lot into this facility. It's something because the whole thing is we came to the determination that for Brandy to be able to help as many people as possible, we can't send Brandy around the country. We just don't have enough of her. And to be honest with you, when you put Brandy on the plane, she's not a happy camper a lot of time. I'm just telling you, I spent 3 days with this lady, okay, traveling across Texas and all that kind of stuff. So watch for this coming out.